DJ and PK joined now by Tim LaComb, brought to you by Sphere Staffing and Recruiting. Are you a business owner? You have better things to do than to job hunt or scramble to find your next great hire. Let Sphere Staffing and Recruiting do it. Visit Sphere online at spherein.com/Utah. Tim, good morning.
Good morning. What's up, Tej?
There are so many things, so many basketball questions for you. Let's start.
Well, I'll do my best to answer.
Let's start in your backyard. BYU. I am curious with all this talent, but a lot of it's new. You've got transfers coming in from Rutgers and from Utah. You've got international players. You've got a guy from Africa, a guy from Russia. You got about half the roster was there last year. You got a freshman coming in from Corner Canyon. How do you meld all this talent, all this potential into a real team? Because everybody's got their plan. Some guys only want to be here 1 year. Some of you guys dreamed of wearing the blue for 4. How do you get this mix into a cohesive team? What do you do?
Well, you know what would be a good start is to get somebody that, maybe a handful of guys that coached people like this before, maybe in the G League, where you're getting all sorts of different dudes and everybody's timeline's a little bit different. I think BYU set up great there. The coaching staff has dealt with this time and time again. It's basically the start of every season. In the G League, you get a whole new slew of guys. There's some guys that have been around, but a lot of new faces with different programs. And I think probably the most important thing amongst all of it is that they have, you said the word cohesiveness, they're able to form a team. But on top of that, to be able to quickly assess and begin to develop these guys, which is another great skill the staff possesses. But that's the challenge every single year, every single team. You've got 13 individuals with their own plan, and you need to make it all meld into the most important plan, and that's the team plan and winning games.
With all that said, how much do you even marvel that he's got this class like this? Because it used to be when a coaching hire was made, you sort of looked for low expectations on the initial recruiting class because, he was late and all that stuff. And I realize with the transfer portal things have changed, but the newcomers that he's got, the incoming freshmen, seem to be so wild as far as the expectations that I don't know how it's going to turn out. But you got to give him and Kevin Young and his staff the credit to be able to get these guys in such a short period of time.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I think the thing to point out is obviously, there's been a different type of financial commitment made, and that's part of it. But I've told a bunch of people it's not just walking around waving money because, money's always been part of the deal. It's just now above the table, which is a game BYU can play now because everything is, above board and legal. So it's one they feel comfortable playing. But at the same time, you still have to have, knowledge of guys, and you have to have a relationship. Guys aren't just going to come blindly for the money. I think money is definitely a factor, but all these guys have professional ambition. And so when you're getting these top level guys, you've got to have something that stands out that impresses them, from a system standpoint, from a coaching standpoint. So money's definitely a factor, but yeah, you got to give these guys a ton of credit for identifying talent this quickly, going out and being able to compete with other schools, and ultimately to be able to get guys that, quite frankly, BYU's never really been in the game for.
You've been watching Summer League. Who has made a positive impression on you right out of the gate? Someone you're confident saying, that guy's going to be a pretty good player in the NBA. They got him.
Well, I was so high on Cody Williams all the way along. I think he's a guy for the Jazz that, just makes sense. I think his only limitation right now is his strength, his physical strength. And we all know that's, after 19 coming in here, you just look at Taylor Hendricks' body after 1 year, and strength will not be an issue. But I think he he shows all the things we saw on film. His understanding of the game. If he gets locked up, he's a great cutter and get some back cut dunks, those types of things. But we've seen him shoot the three and put it on the floor and attack the basket and get out in transition. I think he's the guy out of the draft that I was hoping the Jazz would be able to get. I didn't think there was any way he'd be there at 10. But when they did get him at that point, really, really happy. And I think he's played well. Again, there's going to be nights where he is physically just kind of moved around, and that's going to happen. I remember Walker Kessler's rookie year, particularly early in the rookie year, he had to figure out how to deal with all that physicality. The real answer is, get in the weight room, build your strength over time. But in the short term, there'll be some great nights and there's going to be some tough nights, but that can be said for rookies generally.
Yes, it can. With watching these guys play in multiple summer league games, the three guys that they drafted, I have a level of positivity regarding their ability to be players in this league, whether, knowing that you're going to have to give it time, to what degree remains to be seen, and then combine with George and Hendricks of what we've seen from last year. I'm thinking, for multiple reasons, I might be more in on the tank than I have been the last couple of years, because get these guys playing time at the NBA level rather than the G League level. I don't think they look overwhelmed. And then also, too, they're going to lose because youth at that level, being so young, doesn't win in this league. And you could set yourself up for a better draft pick, knowing that if you're not in the top 10 again, you lose the thing to Oklahoma City this year. So for multiple reasons, I might say if somebody said, hey, tank or try to win as many games as possible, I think I would go tank. What do you think?
Well, thank you very much for that. I think
I got it.
Yeah. I think that you said the most important thing there. I think you fill your roster with first and second year guys, and you can't expect to win a whole lot, unless they're just all, really incredible players. And these guys are great players, but they've got a lot of limitations early, and they've got some things to learn. So yeah, rookies in general, that's going to be the equation. And so, it's going to be an interesting I'm curious to see how the summer finishes up, and if this is the roster. But I think you're thinking right. I think it's going to be a team that's got a ton of young talent. Young talent struggles to be consistent, but we'll see great flashes and we'll see tough nights. I mean, yesterday, that summer league game last night was brutal. 26, 27 turnovers. Everybody took their turn. And, I mean, those are the type of things that will happen on certain nights when another team kind of climbs up in space. But certainly the prize is out there. Again, I think they've got a generational guy waiting at the top of the draft in Cooper Flagg. So it's just going to be now, what do the Jazz do to round out the roster? But I think that, to me, that's the direction this thing's going.
If that's the direction it's going to go, don't they need to move Collins and move Clarkson? Because those guys are going to win a game. Maybe, if you just win 1 or 2 games a month, that's 5 to 10 victories that'll mess up your draft position. To PK's point about, oops, look, you're drafting 12, so you're not drafting at all.
Yeah, those are the two guys when I say round out the roster, is kind of thinking about, I know that those guys have been floated out there for most of the summer, Clarkson even last year at the deadline. So it'll be interesting to see as teams are finishing out their roster as well. If there are moves made, it would not surprise me, and I think that would fit the narrative.
What return? Do you look to move them? You can hold out for a first-round pick. You can do whatever you want. But if the market doesn't dictate it, do you just lower your standards, I guess?
Well, I mean, the one thing Ainge never does is he never gets desperate. And, in my mind, he tries to avoid at all costs a bad deal. So That's where this gets a little bit tricky because you definitely have the desire, if you're going to play young guys, you got the desire to move a couple of dudes, but that not, those two particular guys, it may not be as easy to get back what you expect or want. So I don't think you completely bite the bullet, but I think there are a lot of teams out there, particularly Clarkson, guy coming off the bench that could really spark a team. And then Collins, he definitely kind of repackaged, was able to, after the year of shooting 29% in Atlanta, come to Utah. And I think he's shown a comfort level here. I think he's kind of found himself playing that small ball five. So, yeah, it depends on what other suitors are out there. But that is the one right now. That's the piece that I'm focused on, just kind of looking at the roster saying, in a perfect world, I think that those two things will probably have to happen.
I think the tougher call is what do the Jazz want to do with Colin Sexton? He's a little older. He's seen a little more time, playing in the fourth quarter and might be a little more poised with the game on the line. He also has a similar role. He's not exactly the same, but a similar role to Keontae George. And then you could see where he overlaps with Collier a little bit. So what do you think his future is with the club?
I actually think Colin made, in my mind, the biggest move of anybody last year. I think he really has right-sized his game. You saw a lot of careless turnovers when he got here, and you saw some similar things to Collier in some respects, a guy who has the physical tools to just be outstanding, but sometimes, it's learning to drive the Lamborghini and deal with some of the features. So I think Sexton's a little bit like that. I think he's really learned through development, and I think the Jazz have done a phenomenal job, just slowing him down and having him see his reads and being more conscious of what those reads are. So I actually am one to keep Sexton. I think Sexton is a guy who's going to hold some. I think he's still on the incline in his career. I think he's still getting better. So I think it's worth keeping him around and serving as somewhat of a mentor in some ways for Collier.
Who can play together, though, in the backcourt? How much do you factor that in?
Well, I think Sexton and Collier would be really a nuisance back there for teams. The way that they can crawl up in the ball. The one thing about Collier, he's bigger than you think. He's 6'4", 6'5", and so those guys could really get after it. And I think that they could, create for each other, create for the team. That could be a pretty interesting guard tandem. I don't see any guys that can't necessarily play together. If a guy, we go back to where a guy's 6'1" or 6'2" and really struggles, but Jazz has some size. Keontae's a bigger guard now, some length, and I like the way he's put on some weight in the offseason. His body looks better. So I think their guard line actually could work together fine. Even Clarkson, if he's around, he could fit in as well. But it's just a matter now of the last X number of weeks of summer and how this thing will evolve, if it changes at all, and if it does, who.
Switching to the Olympics here with the tune-up game, are you encouraged because the U.S. led Australia, one of the better teams in the Olympics, by 24 in the third, or are you discouraged because they had 18 turnovers and it was a 6-point game in the fourth?
Well, I've been told that Mark Few is the turnover coach, and I'm really disappointed in his effort to limit those. I'm just kidding. I just had to throw some shade at my guy. It's crazy. I haven't watched a ton yet. I'll watch as things start to heat up. I've never, outside of the Dream Team, and even before that, when they used to send just regular Joes, I've just never been that geeked on Olympic basketball. But what I will say is I think the world's catching up. I think it's pretty obvious the games that the USA used to win by 60, 70 points, and now those games are in the teens. And I think every country has gotten better. I think the basketball being played all over the world is really good. So this will be fun. It's going to be fun to kind of hone in on that. But I honestly have been watching way more baseball in Summer League right now, to be completely honest.
Well, were you surprised that when Kawhi Leonard was taken off the team that the Olympic Committee didn't choose to replace him with Bronny?
Yes. I mean, he is putting on a show in Vegas, the likes we haven't seen since Wayne Newton's last show.
Donkashane.
Donkashane, baby. But the crazy thing, pull up ESPN, search Summer League, and Bronny James, regardless of the day, is the picture. They just, like last night, they have a picture of him up against the Celtics. And it's just kind of sad in some respects. I think, yes, last night he ended up with 2 points. I mean, he's airballed.
He's in a shooting slump. Come on, it happens.
The Summer League and airballs, you know? If there were a stat for that, I bet Locke has one.
Yeah.
Most airballs.
And there's a lot of that because it's in Vegas.
Oh, dude, it's brutal. You know, guys, the minute they get out of there, they've got big plans all night, and then they show up the next day and airball again. I love your chuckle. I like making you laugh. You're such a cynic that when I make you laugh, I know I've done it.
Not a cynic.
Yes, you are.
Mission accomplished.
I don't believe that.
DJ, is he a cynic?
See what he did there? He doesn't believe you. Because he's cynical.
I mean, you've been sitting next to him for what seems like 100 years.
105 in dog years.
Methuselah.
Yeah, you should see him now, man. The guy can golf. We went out. Wow. He's powdering
really?
the ball. Oh, yeah. You give him a couple of tips. He takes them to heart.
Does then he start talking trash? Or is he
He said on drives on 9 yesterday, he said, hey, you know, did you know that they can put an entire gymnasium between your ball and mine?
I gave you that one time. PK outdrove me so bad one time. I said, you know, they're building the Super Walmart out here. And he's like, where? I said, between my ball and yours.
Jeez, man.
Good line. Everybody use it as if it were your own.
I had to be on my game just to beat him. That was unusual. Usually that was wrapped up by hole 4.
You got me by 2 or 3 strokes, if I remember right.
This guy, he's a player, man.
Well, I'm excited. I got to go see this, DJ.
Okay.
Let's
I
do the
hope I
Santa
can
Barbara
deliver.
Invitational in Utah.
Riverside is calling us.
Yes, it is.
PK.
Pick up the phone.
He's sliding in a little golf invite. Which country club are you going to get us on?
You want to play at the Riverside? I can get you on Riverside.
Had a kid. All right. We will let you go now. We appreciate it as always, Tim.
Yeah, mission accomplished. I made him laugh.
There you go. Tim LaComb, Jazz Radio Studio Analyst, join us right here on The Zone. DJ and PK. It's 97.5 The Zone. Coming up next. You missed it. We got it for you. Stay tuned.
This is Hansel